April T posts pretty interesting videos once in a while, and then they disappear. Anyway, I thought this was one of them, so let's check it out.
As the experiment of Solomon Asch reveals.
The experiment you'll be taking part in today involves the perception of lengths of lines. As you can see here, I have a number of cards, and on each card there are several lines. Your task is a very simple one. You're to look at the line on the left and determine which of the three lines on the right is equal to it in length. All right, we'll proceed in this order. You'll give your answer.
Only one of the people in the group is a real subject, the fifth person with the white t-shirt. The others are confederates of the experimenter and have been told to give wrong answers on some of the trials. The experiment begins uneventfully as subjects give their judgments.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 3.
But on the third trial, something happens.
2, 2, 2, 2, 2.
The subject did.
Oh, no offense to any ladies out there, but that dude is a vagina.
Denies the evidence of his own eyes and yields to group influence.
What?
Asch found subjects went along with the group on 37% of the critical trials. But he found through interviews that they went along with the group for different reasons.
1.
Why do we study these things? Now, I'm sure these scientists are genuinely interested in society, how the brain works, groupthink, conformity, psychology, so on and so forth. I'm sure they're just genuinely, a lot of them anyway, interested in this stuff. But who funds this type of stuff? And who finds this research very, very useful? Rhetorical questions, really.
1. They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me. 1.
This subject's yielding is based on a distortion of his judgment.
They must be right. There are 4 of them and 1 of me, right? Appeal to popularity. Basic fallacy. Despite his better judgment, this guy just goes with the group thinks, right? He doesn't want to stick out like a nail.
He genuinely believes that the group is correct.
1. 1. 1. 2.
So, extrapolating these findings onto our current situation today, this is how you could literally present the truth to the people, right? Like, for example, the same person will come out and say that masks are bad, and then he'll say masks are good, right? When he speaks to his colleagues, this is Fauci, he says the virus has a 100% death rate, right? And then when he is on TV, he inflates that number 300-fold or so, right? You could present these people with the truth, but they'll just go with what the people around them say, right? They can see the truth, you know, it'll make sense to them, right? You can maybe not logically, but reasonably, you could basically assume, right? It would be safe to assume that when Fauci talks to his colleagues, right, other scientists, we should probably take that as, you know, even though he's contradicting himself later on TV, the stuff he says to his colleagues who could call him out on this BS, right? Or, you know, these are the experts, these are the scientists, right? That should be the truth, right? Probably, you know, reasonably. And yet, people go with what he says on TV because, well, that's a larger audience that's receptive to this message, and it gets repeated so much more, and people just believe it, despite the fact that the truth, or what we could reasonably surmise is the truth, is right in front of them, could be presented to them. They won't accept it, right? This is also, in my opinion, part of this demoralization. This dude, he knows what the truth is, right? But he lies.
1, 2, 2, 2.
I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves?
2.
This guy, right? I know they're wrong, but why should I make waves? I know what the truth is, but I'm just gonna go with the lie, right? Or what I'm going to lie. Why should I make waves, right? Coward.
In this case, the subject knows he is right, but goes along to avoid the discomfort of disagreeing with the...
And this is an, an experiment where there are, I don't know, 6, 7 people watching, present, right? It's not that big a deal to stick out. Now imagine, maybe some of you don't have to, being in a society where the majority think a certain way, and everywhere you go, you're confronted with mask wearers and all these boosted people, right? I mean, talk about transhumanism, right? We're gonna boost you right out of or into the atmosphere, or I don't know, man. Like these over here are boosted like muscle cars or something, right? Are these still humans? Are they? Doesn't to boost something also mean steal something, right? Maybe it's their souls.
group. Here, the distortion is at the level of his response.
2, 2, 2, 2.
In the previous experiment, the naive subject stood alone against the group. In this variation, Ash gave the naive subject a partner, here seated in the third position, who also gives the correct response.
1, 1, 2, 1, 2.
With a partner, yielding drops to only 5% of the critical trials compared to 37% without a partner. Although subjects report warmth and good feeling toward the partner, they typically deny that he played a role in their own independence.
This reminds me of watching one of Sean Baker's videos the other day. It must have been from a week or two ago. And everybody in the comments, like, not everybody, but a ton of people, maybe even the majority, are saying, I called this from the beginning, this scamdemic. I try to tell you guys, I told everybody around me that this was nonsense. Blah, like, all these people are just coming out and saying things that obviously they weren't saying before. Some of them probably were, but they were nowhere to be found. Not on social media where it's safer, quote unquote safer, rather than in real life with people that, trying to convince people of the truth, the majority that doesn't believe the truth, right? In real life, confronting people in real life. I'm supposed to believe they were doing this in real life when they were nowhere to be found at the beginning, at the inception of this thing, right? Now they're all woke, right? They all get it because viruses exist and cause disease. They think that they're they think that they're awake, right? Because they finally realize that there's something awry here, but they're still far, far, far and away from the truth, right? And try to convince them or present them with the evidence that terrain theory evidence, right? And they'll still reject that, right? Because Sean Baker says it's not okay, or he doesn't support that, right? So in other words, they have found themselves in a group that thinks a certain way, right? And they happen to agree. They have all noticed that something is wrong, and they're quote unquote brave in speaking out now, right? Now that it's too late, chumps, and they're all patting each other on the back saying, I told you from the beginning, right? But no one is giving anybody any credit for them being able to speak the truth now, something they weren't able to do before, right? So little by little, people started coming out, putting themselves out there, sticking out like a nail, getting criticized, attacked, but more, they've been able to convince more and more people. And now, the number seems to be a lot greater than at the very beginning. And everyone is acting like, oh, I didn't need any help to come to this conclusion. I did it all by myself. I was here from the beginning, right? They're all trying to take credit, when in reality, they're still following groupthink, right? They're a little bit closer to the truth, no doubt about it, but they're still sheep, right? They didn't come to these conclusions on their own. They needed, Sean to hold their hand, and other people like that. Because when I first started, like a week into the whole hullabaloo, the things I was saying, like, how do you convince all of these morons out there, all these people who are always saying correlation doesn't equal causation, right? How does all of a sudden correlation equal causation? A very, very, very weak correlation, right? Something like, I don't know what it is, depending on who you ask, 20 to 10% of the people that test positive for the virus, a very, very minute percentage of them, maybe as little as 10%, get sick, right? So how are we blaming the virus for the disease when 90 up to 90 or even more percent of the people with the virus don't ever get sick? That doesn't make any sense, right? But all of a sudden, a tiny, tiny correlation equals causation without any other shred of evidence, right? And these so-called mechanisms, which have never been observed in the human body, right? That are supposedly happening when it comes to these viruses, well, they don't make any fucking sense. So everybody's smart now, right? Because they still might be in a minority, but they have found their group, right? And they're acting as if they were individuals when they're still all sheep, right? Because if they were able to actually think for themselves, not to say that, there aren't people helping you in your thought process or process of discovery or learning new things. Obviously, we all have teachers, if you will, or people who point us in the right direction. But, if they're such great individuals, they would keep questioning and take it a step further and really pull back the curtain, right? But no, they're not going to do that. They're just, it's all hive mind. They're all stuck in their little group. And it's, the oft talked about on this channel, boring, lame, predictable, garbage, left-right paradigm, right? False fucking dialectic. So you're a little bit wokety woke than the people on or you're a different kind of woke, basically, than the people on the left. Give me a break, man.
The partnership variation shows that much of the power of the group came not merely from its numbers, but from the unanimity of its opposition. When that unanimity is punctured, the group's power is greatly reduced. Sometimes
So the people that, I don't know about this particular study, but the groups, organizations, corporations that fund these studies, what they've learned from these studies probably is that they need to provide you with controlled opposition. And a lot of these people that are controlled opposition have no idea that they are controlled opposition, right? That's why they're useful idiots. That gets you a little bit, because you are maybe, I don't know, maybe you have higher IQ, or you're more of a critical thinker, or, you're just more aware than the average bear, and something is wrong. You're looking for the truth. So then they provide you with these people that get you a little bit closer to the truth, but because they're still incoherent themselves, or they're on the payroll, or whatever the hell may be, right? That's how they harness this energy and basically still keep you within the broader paradigm, right? Whether it be germ theory, or the allopathic medicine paradigm, or support the current political system by voting, right? That paradigm, support this political system. Just vote for these guys, not those guys. But ultimately, you're voting for the same system, right? This is how they harness your creativity, if you will, or your ability for critical thinking, ability to, or willingness to step outside of the box and search for answers, right? That's how they harness all of that and bring you back into the fold, right? By providing you with these gatekeepers like Sean Baker, who has no clue that he's a gatekeeper, right? I mean, the man went and got tested. He got his whole family tested, right? For COVID. Like, that's the great way. That's the only way to keep this shit going, right? Is to keep getting tested and getting tested positive, especially, right? That's how you fuel the fire of this, so-called pandemic, basically. So, like, he's on the one hand, the guy is against all these restrictions and all these draconian rules, but then he goes and gets tested. Like, what, is he really that dumb? Or is he just a shill? You know what I mean? I don't know. Doesn't really matter. Ultimately, at the end of the day, he's fucking up. He's still fucking up. So, in the very beginning, someone like Baker was saying, and I just use him as an archetype, right? Like, a lot of people are like that. Or an example, if you will. He was completely pro viruses. He said, this is our new normal, get used to it. That's what he said, right? This is our new normal, get used to it. And maybe he started to wake up a little bit, or maybe he's paid to shill and bring these people back into the fold. Maybe they promised him, oh, look, man, you'll get your license back. I'm just saying, I don't know. I mean, but look at all these so-called artists coming out with, get your vaccine songs and all these different channels on YouTube promoting the current narrative, right? Like, they're all financially rewarded for this, right? Whether it's by not getting demonetized and getting pushed by the algorithm, or literally getting money from Pfizer. I wouldn't at all be surprised if Unnatural Vegan always was working for the pharmaceutical industry, pushing vaccines, because any rational person, which she pretends to be, right, can just look at the evidence, and anyone who looks at the evidence, honestly, will not, with a clear conscience, support someone like Pfizer or a corporation like Pfizer, especially given their history, right? So these people are getting paid, right? Whether it's directly from Pfizer and they have a contract with someone like Pfizer, or they're basically rewarded by North America's or the Western world's their own version of social credit system, right? We'll just call it beta, right? That's what YouTube monetization is, essentially. That's what it is. It's the social credit system, right? If you behave, your videos get pushed, and you get paid, right? That's it, right? You could be a little rebel, doctor, and I'm not saying that this happened overtly, but these people, they've been studying human psychology, group behavior for many, many years, decades, centuries even. They know how to manipulate us, right? So whether it's tacitly or explicitly, someone like Dr. Sean Baker he's encouraged to be exactly that which he is. He's not a critical thinker. Fuck no. He's well within the paradigm, and he's supporting. Let me just look at his actions. Listen to the things he says. Has he ever mentioned terrain theory? Yeah, he talks about being healthy and stuff like that. But come on, man. Like, take the next step, dude. Don't be a coward. Take the next step. But if he does, that'll be his license, and so on and so forth. So, his colleagues will ridicule him. Maybe he won't get invited to some of these dinners. Forget about ever going back on Joe Rogan, so on and so forth, right? These are all useful idiots or literally just shills getting paid by the pharmaceutical industry. So, yeah, that was a pretty long rant. What else do we have here?
We go along with the group because what they say convinces us they are right. This is called informational conformity. But sometimes we conform because we are apprehensive that the group will disapprove if we are deviant. This is called normative conformity. The strength of the normative factor is shown in another variation carried out by Ash. In this variation, the subject is told that because he had arrived late, he would have to write his answers. Subjects in this private response experiment are exposed to the same amount of misleading information as other subjects, but they are immune from any possible criticism by the group.
1.
And this enormously reduces the pressure to conform. Conformity drops by 2/3.
So this sort of thing here makes me believe that eventually YouTube is going to require people to show their faces or name their channels, have their full name available, if not as their channel name, their first name and last name visible and knowable, or they're going to be able to be identified in one way or another where there will be more public accountability, right? Because right now it's easy for a lot of people who don't show their faces, a lot of the times don't even use their own voice, right? It's a lot easier for people to speak out against what's happening because they don't have to put themselves out there like that, right? I think ultimately they're going to push, or they're going to reward by pushing pushing their videos to the forefront and not demonetizing people, right? They're gonna find a way to make us less anonymous, basically, because then we'll conform that much easier. I think it's going to happen eventually.
Ash's experiment is a classic. It reveals how people will deny what they see and submit to group pressure. It allows us not only to observe conformity, but to study the conditions that increase or reduce its occurrence.
See, and these psychologists or whatever working within the paradigm of evolution, they'll say that we were always this way, this is our human nature, and blah blah blah. And while I do think there probably is that component to it, at the same time, these desires not to stick out or to belong to a group, I think these certain also naturally occurring tendencies that we have as human beings, tribal beings, I think they've been stoked by TV, advertising, trends, right? Fashion, all types of stuff where you're basically presented with like a few options of what to wear or what that you should wear, cologne or perfume, that you need to shave, that you need to wear I don't know, shoes when you walk around, all these social behaviors, they've been basically, a lot of them been imposed on us by, well, people like Edward Bernays, for example, in order to help us conform, right? If you're a man, this is how you dress. If you're a woman, this is how you dress, right? You have to be quote unquote presentable when you're in this or that environment. We've basically been brainwashed so much to not stick out, to conform. That's where fashion trends come from. That's why everybody listens to the same music. People cut their hair the same way. Whatever it may be, these tendencies or desires to because I think I have a feeling that we used to be a lot more individual in the past, right? You're gonna have people all over the spectrum, but this sort of conformity has been stoked and promoted for obvious reasons, right? And individuals, even though we like to talk a lot about individuality, right? Just like in the States, everybody likes to talk about freedom and how, the president of the United States is the leader of the free world and some such nonsense, right? But that's also part of this conformity, right? This is the narrative we spit, and then so people don't actually believe, and a lot of people do, obviously, but in general, people don't actually believe in freedom, right? They just say these things because it's in vogue. That's what you're supposed to say, right? So because these people are demoralized, they don't have any values, right? They don't have any standards, or maybe the only standard is just repeat what you're being told, right? Just echo the message that comes from above. Once you get people to do that, right? And I think it's been done also very counterintuitively or paradoxically, if you will, with this freedom rhetoric, for example, right? Because people weren't actually believing in freedom, they were just repeating shit. You just, flip the tape, if you will, or you script a different narrative, and they're just going to repeat it because they're demoralized and they don't actually believe the things that they're saying. They're only saying them because it's in vogue, right? It's groupthink. This is what you're supposed to say. So this is how the freedom rhetoric how they were able to so quickly replace it with, slavery rhetoric. Obviously, they don't use these words, but listen to Fauci on TV saying basically like, we have to give up personal freedom for the common good, right? The commie that he is, and people are just swallowing this shit up. Whereas people on the left and the right, except for the extreme left, maybe if you asked them 3 years ago about communism, probably like 95% of Americans would have been, negatively inclined toward communism, right? Because that's the narrative, and they don't actually understand why necessarily, and it's not part of their moral fabric, if you will, or axiomatic framework. It's just a thing that they say because that's what the TV told them, right? So then you just switch the programming, and now they're saying something. Now everybody in the United States, obviously I'm exaggerating, but the majority just like overnight switch from freedom-loving capitalists, which is problematic in and of itself, to slavery-promoting communists, just like that, right? Because they're demoralized, they don't have any values really. Obviously, once again, I'm talking about the majority, and they just repeat. They're programmed to repeat whatever the authorities say, whatever the popular narrative is, because none of them want to stick out, right? So, man, this is how they create sheep, and this little experiment from what looks like the 70s really explains and illustrates how this is done. And I think the findings from these experiments were used by the people that found them useful to bring about exactly what is happening right now. And that's why these experiments happen in the first place, right? I'm not saying that everybody involved in these experiments was thinking that far ahead, or those are the reasons why they did what they did, but they were useful idiots getting a paycheck and getting pushed to the forefront by whatever algorithm existed back then, right? So yeah, very interesting video. And yeah, there's oftentimes some pretty interesting videos on April T's channel. So yeah, go check them out, because they pop up and then they disappear. Anyway, I felt like ranting a little bit. Hope everybody is doing well. I got shit to do, so let me get to it. Thanks for watching.